Welcome. Thank you for joining this 10-minute briefing. Over the next few minutes, I want to walk through how the cyber risk conversation is changing and why the FAIR risk model has become central to how Aqua engages with security leaders and boards. The title of this briefing is Closing the Patch Clock Gap. That gap is the space between when a vulnerability is discovered and when it can be safely remediated in a regulated production environment. For years, that gap was uncomfortable but manageable. In the AI era, it has become the single most important risk surface that most organizations are not yet measuring properly. What I will share is a control chain that operates across that window: assurance before deploy, admission at deploy, eBPF backed enforcement during execution, and containment after compromise. Equally important, I will show how to express the value of that control chain as a defensible dollar figure that your board can act on. That last point matters more than people realize. Vulnerability counts do not move executive decisions. Quantified financial risk does. Let's begin. The new reality. Before we get to the controls or to the mathematics, I want to ground this in evidence. AI-assisted vulnerability discovery is no longer hypothetical. It is finding real 0 days in real production code at machine speed. There are two examples on screen. On the left, Google's Big Sleep Agent, a project from DeepMind and Project Zero. In July 2025, it identified CVE ending 6965, a critical SQL flaw that Google has stated was already known to threat actors and on the verge of being exploited. Big Sleep caught it first. Since then, the same agent has gone on to find more than 20 vulnerabilities across ImageMagick, Chrome Angle, U-Boot, and Barebox. These are projects with decades of human review and traditional fuzzing already invested in them. On the right, XBOW, an autonomous AI penetration tester that became the first non-human to reach the top of the HackerOne United States leaderboard in 90 days. Over 1,000 validated findings, 54 classified as critical, an unknown vulnerability affecting more than 2,000 hosts. XBOW has already raised $120 million in 2026. The pattern is clear. These tools find variants of patched vulnerabilities, fuzzing-resistant memory bugs, and chained exploits at a tempo that human review simply cannot match. The asymmetry has flipped. Attackers used to need to find one bug to win, while defenders had to fix all of them. Now attackers have help finding many bugs faster than your patch cycle can ship a fix. That is the new reality, and the FAIR risk model needs to reflect it. Next, we will look at the FAIR risk model. This is the FAIR Risk Dashboard. Before we walk through it, here is a 30-second primer on what FAIR actually is. This should be helpful for people in the audience who do not have a deep FAIR background. FAIR stands for Factor Analysis of Information Risk. It is an open methodology that takes a vulnerability story and turns it into a financial story. The core equation is simple. Annual loss expectancy equals loss event frequency multiplied by the loss magnitude, reduced by the Aqua controls you have in place. Loss event frequency is how often a bad thing is likely to happen in a year. Loss magnitude is what it costs you when it does. Controls are what reduces that. Everything in this dashboard is a different cut of that equation. Look at the top four cards. Total risk is the residual annual loss expectancy across the estate after controls. Base risk is the same number with no controls applied. Risk reduction is the percentage difference between the two bars, which is the customer visible value of the Aqua platform expressed in monetary values. Controls active is how many compensating controls are currently mapped in. This next area is the risk by line of business table. Each row is a line of business. The platform has discovered through label mapping and Aqua application scopes, base and adjusted annual loss expectancy. After controls, the savings figure, the percentage reduction, the vulnerability count, the workload count, and the count of controls in effect. This table is the executive summary of the entire program. This page is where the platform stops being one size fits all. When working with customers on this over the last 6 months, they all say the same thing. They like the model. They do not like the defaults. One customer of ours thinks a critical breach costs them multiple billions of dollars. A regional bank thinks 100 million. A SaaS vendor thinks 10. They cannot all be right, and they cannot all use the same number. So fair calibration gives the customer a way to override the values without reshaping the model. That is the design rule. Values, yes. Structure, no. The customer can change what something costs. They cannot change the equation. They cannot invent new severity tiers. They cannot rewrite the control taxonomy. The model stays consistent. The numbers become theirs. Next, you will see 6 tabs. Loss magnitude is monetary values per severity tier. Exploit probability is how likely an attacker is to weaponize a vulnerability at each severity. Threat frequency is how often that severity of attack lands in a year per workload. Severity weights are the multipliers we apply when blending classes of vulnerability. The last 2 tabs, AI, threat frequency, and exploit probability, are the same shape, but for the new era profile. We will come back to those when we look at the AI. Risk dashboard. Every cell you see here is overridable. When an override is in effect, you get a small chip next to the value that says overridden. Hover the chip and you see who changed it, when, and what the default was. That audit trail matters for regulated customers, and it matters for internal audits. A customer needs to verify their numbers by making every change time-stamped and attributable. One more thing, notice the 3 preset buttons at the top of this page: TLV preset, primary loss preset, per event preset. These let you load demonstration sets of values quickly. Let me show you why those matter. 3 presets, 3 different risk conversations. The TLV preset uses total loss value numbers. TLV shows the all-in figure, including primary loss, secondary loss, regulatory exposure, brand damage, and recovery. This is a useful preset when talking to your board or when you have completed your own annualized loss work and you want the biggest credible number on the table. The primary loss preset strips secondary and reputational figures back out, critical at around 1 billion. This is useful for a chief risk officer who wants a defensible, conservative number they can put in a regulatory filing. The per event preset uses industry-aligned single incident numbers, critical at 100 million. This is useful with a head of security or a technical team who wants realistic per incident framing without the headline figures. Same FAIR model in all 3 cases, same dashboard, same equation, same control map. The difference is purely in the monetary values, and that is exactly what the calibration system is designed to allow. And once with the AI era profile, which assumes attackers have access to AI-assisted vulnerability discovery, AI-assisted exploit reproduction, and the ability to chain weaknesses faster than traditional patch governance can respond. Same workloads, same controls, same vulnerabilities in scope. The only thing that changes is the threat model. Let's look at the 3 top cards. Standard profile shows the residual annual loss expectancy under classical assumptions. AI era profile shows it under Mythos era assumptions. The delta card shows the multiplier and the dollar difference between the two. In a typical estate, that delta lands somewhere between 5 and 10 times, sometimes higher. The reason is in the calibration we looked at on the previous tab. The threat frequency goes up because more vulnerabilities reach exploitable status faster. Exploit probability goes up because automated reproduction collapses the cost of weaponizing a finding. And the loss event frequency cap is lifted because in the AI era, the rate of incidents per workload can credibly hit numbers that the standard profile would treat as implausible. Look at the line of business table on this page. You will notice it shows the same LOBs the standard dashboard showed, and that is deliberate. The 2 views run on the same 90-day window, so you can directly compare. The rightmost columns show the AI era annual loss expectancy and the multiplier per line of business. This is the screen where you realize the conversation is not theoretical. your own workloads, your own dollar values, twice the risk picture side by side. So let's close the demo. Starting with a brief overview of the operating model first, the sustainable response is 5 stages. Identify whether the affected component is actually deployed. Prioritize based on runtime exposure, privilege, internet reachability, and business criticality. Contain through admission control, runtime detection, drift prevention, and workload restrictions. Remediate through controlled engineering and change processes. And verify that the workload is either patched or contained until permanent remediation completes. That is the operating model. Aqua plays in stages 2, 3, and 5. Risk-based prioritization through workload and runtime context. Containment through image assurance, admission control, behavioral detection, and drift prevention. Verification through runtime telemetry and policy compliance evidence. Patching itself stays where it belongs with engineering. The Aqua message is therefore precise. We do not replace the patch. We help our customers survive the gap until the patch is safe to deploy. In a Mythos era estate, that gap is where the risk lives. And the size of that gap is exactly what the AI Risk Dashboard quantifies. So here is the picture in one frame, 2 profiles, 1 FAIR equation, 1 dashboard. The standard profile shows the customer the risk they have been carrying for the last 10 years. The AI era profile shows them the risk they are about to inherit. Same workload, same controls, same dollar values, run twice through the same equation. No other platform on the market does this. Fair quantification at the workload and runtime level. 2 threat models in the same view. Customer calibratable values without changing the model. And a control reduction term that is fed by Aqua's image assurance, admission policy, and runtime telemetry, not by a generic checklist. That is the demo. That is the value. That is the conversation.